Hello and welcome back. Paul Gerard from Price Accounting Services. Today we're discussing tax return label D4. It's work-related self-education expenses. Now notice that I said work-related self-education expenses. Quite often it gets overlooked by taxpayers. That work-related nexus is absolutely critical to these deductions. So we're going to explore that issue together with what sorts of deductions you can expect you may be able to claim or not claim at this area. Let's start by explaining what is not included. So if you undertake a course or a form of education, something new, something different. For example, let's say you're, a stockbroker and you want to learn how to do carpentry. It is not tax deductible, okay? The reason for that is a preliminary course. It's too soon, it's too early. It's a bit like a carpenter who has chosen a course of a career in carpentry cannot claim a work-related self-education expense related to their apprenticeship or their preliminary education. An accountant can't claim a bachelor's degree. When it may become deductible is when somebody furthers their study. So let's use that example of the accountant. Let's assume that somebody's a bookkeeper and they're unqualified as an accountant. They enjoy their role, they're employed as a bookkeeper, they do want to progress. And they choose to then go on and do further study, maybe TAFE, go to diploma or go to university, and their intention is to progress to become a chartered accountant or a CPA or some other form of professionally recognised accountant and a tax agent. Those expenses will be deductible for that person. So that's an important distinction. Avoid the preliminary stuff. The other thing that's not going to be covered under self-education can be where there's no nexus to income production. So for example, a hobby, a new skill or a different skill, something that's completely unrelated. But interestingly, many professional organisations, even including CPA Australia, will allow you, for example, to study French and consider that as part of your continuing professional development. But for tax purposes, no deduction, okay? Another area where we find non-deductibility is in, and very expensive, is in the area of something new. So taking on an investment course, learning how to trade futures or currencies. They don't relate to what you do now, so it's not deductible. If anything, it might relate to an investment intention, but again, preliminary to the actual endeavour and highly likely to be non-deductible, something an advisor probably needs to discuss with you and give a little bit of guidance and advice on, because we're generally talking larger dollar values. Another cost that we frequently see that is non-deductible relates to coaching. Now, coaching takes many forms. There are business coaches who focus on very specific things, and arguably their cost may well be deductible in terms of being a mentor to your existing role and your existing responsibilities and your need to progress. But many life coaches are literally just that, they're life. They're not business, they're not education, they're just a sounding board, possibly a mentor with very uncertain outcomes, whether it's family relationships or business. Take care with these sorts of deductions. Frequently found to be non-deductible, so again, we encourage you to discuss it with your advisor. So let's say you do have costs for self-education. What are the sorts of costs we see in this area that are deductible? I'm going to refer you to the ATO website on this one because it's very, very broad. Now, once the ATO published on its website that you cannot claim the course costs for a fee, the course fees for and the help repayments. And the way it's always been worded has been very sloppy, and I was a very vocal opponent of that. The tax office has gone away and they've actually cleaned up their website a bit, and they've enhanced the meaning here. When we talk about course fees, if you defer your course fees using the help system, the old HEX system, then yes, those course fees may well be a cost of your self-education. We don't count when you make your repayments, okay? That's an important distinction. That's something the ATO was trying to really, I guess, explain. They did it quite poorly, really. So we've got our course fees. You might have your textbooks. You might have costs associated with direct travel related to attending after work, going from work to your course of study, etc. So have a look at the ATO website for greater clarification. There's a $250 amount that needs to come off your total self-education, and there's some little games you can play where you can count some non-deductible costs, such as childcare, to firstly reduce the $250, and therefore you don't need to deduct that $250 as such, because you're throwing in extra costs that would otherwise not even be deductible. Have a look at that. Pretty important area, because for those who are doing post-grad or continuing education, these costs can be very substantial. I know from, for example, the CPA program, quite expensive. And you can include things like travel and tolls, etc., where they directly relate to your attendance. So there's those sorts of things. One other area to just be cautious about is overseas related self-education. That's one to discuss with an advisor, because it's not necessarily going to be tax deductible where it's a bit of a junket, but it could be very deductible in some situations where the course is specific only to a specific college. I know of medical people who've had to travel overseas to learn new techniques in foreign hospitals. So, yep, tick, self-education's fine there. The other thing to watch is when you do travel overseas, and this one comes up with teachers and people who are educators, the tax office has an expectation that if you travel overseas, they ask and seek to see that your employer is subsidising, sponsoring, or otherwise involved in that choice. What do I mean by that? If you take off on your Christmas annual leave and you let's say go overseas to Greece because you're a teacher of ancient history, the tax office is going to expect that the employer is funding the course, or they're sanctioning and you're being fully paid, given paid release from work to attend the course. Without that, you're on a holiday. Okay, so take care, seek advice, and of course, anytime you've got those sorts of questions, we're here as your advisor. If we're your tax agent, we're here to give you that guidance and support as part of our services. So until we speak again, bye for now.